Thank you everyone for joining. This is our weekly update for the HEALEY ALS Platform Trial. This is Sabrina Paganoni, and as always, I'm here with our patient navigation team, Catherine Small and Alison Bullitt. And tonight we welcome a special guest speaker, Daniel Hevert, one of our fantastic clinical research coordinators at our site. And for many of you who are participating in clinical research, you know that the point of contact, the primary point of contact at the site is generally a clinical research coordinator like Danny. So we brought him tonight, and if you can go to the next slide, we want to really hear from him tonight so that he can explain a little bit more what clinical research coordinators do and how to make the best of the interaction with research coordinators. So Danny, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Sabrina. Hi, everyone. So as Sabrina said, I'm one of the clinical research coordinators working at the platform trial at the MGH site. I kind of started my journey at Mass General after I graduated from UMass Amherst back in 2018. So it's been a few years as a clinical research coordinator, but it's been amazing. I graduated with a degree in biochemistry, and I found my way to the HEALEY Center. I remember my interview at this job. I left almost tearful because I was so excited to work with this wonderful team of people. And so I got this job actually in March 2020, 2 weeks before the pandemic started, and kind of around the time that the platform trial was originally supposed to be started. So I've kind of been here through the beginning and all the trials of the pandemic, and just seen all the growth of the different sites and even our team internally. And so it's been such a wonderful experience to work with this team, but also with all the wonderful participants that I've got to meet over the last couple of years. And you know, the clinical research coordinator, it's a really special position because we are kind of the boots on the ground during the trial. You know, we're the first point of contact for anyone interested in the trial if they want more information. And then we, you know, do all the scheduling for everyone, and we actually get to do some of the outcomes for the trial as well. So it's a little bit of everything, and we're there every step of the way to, you know, make the experience as positive and efficient as possible. And yeah, now we're all the way up to regimen E, and we started with A, B, and C, and you know, we added D, I think around January 2021, and it's amazing to see all the growth, and we're starting to do some data lock for the first 3 regimens. So it's very exciting to be part of this experience, and couldn't have asked for a better opportunity.
Wonderful, thank you so much. And really, I had the pleasure of working with you on this trial at MGH. Really fantastic to work with you. And I just wanted to ask you, who are clinical coordinators? Like, what's their background in general? I know every site is different, so we're not trying to generalize, but kind of, you know, reviewing the landscape from what you know from our site or other sites. What type of degrees do they have, or how do they interact with the rest of the team? So if you could explain the team structure at the site level, that would be great.
Of course. So at our site in particular, because I don't want to talk for other sites, but most of us are, you know, people who have just graduated from an undergraduate degree. So we have a bachelor's, normally in some type of science field. I graduated in biochemistry. And so most of us are actually looking to continue our careers in healthcare. So a lot of students, after doing their undergrad, want to take some time between going to their graduate school, whether that be, you know, medical school, or for me, I'm actually going back to school for an accelerated nursing program and then a master's in nursing program in hopes of becoming a nurse practitioner. So we're all kind of in different areas, but we all want to continue within healthcare. So it's this wonderful experience of, you know, getting to work with patients, but also seeing all the different aspects of patient care. So I work with the multidisciplinary teams here. So I don't just work with coordinators, but I also get to work with nurses, the neurologists, the different nurse practitioners, physical therapists, and, you know, to see everyone collaborate together to kind of work on this one project and also collaborate with the clinical teams to coordinate care has been a really, really special experience.
And can you explain, what does the doctor do, what does the nurse do, and what does the research coordinator do? I know that when people come to the site, any site, for a study visit, they see many people, and different people do different things. So can you explain the roles?
Yeah, so the clinical research coordinator, I like to really think, you know, we coordinate the people and the visit itself. So everything from scheduling the visits to making sure all the source documents are ready, to making sure that we have all the different equipment, whether that be supplies for blood draws or muscle strength testing. We are kind of the ones that make sure we have everything calibrated and ready to go for the visit. We also, kind of rally the different teams. So, for example, we work with nurses to dispense and administer drug and make sure all the accountability and compliance is up to date and everything's going well. And if there's any adverse events or different medications being taken, the nurses review that, and then we also review it with our site investigator, which is the neurologist. And the neurologist is kind of oversight over all the different participants. We have weekly meetings and probably meet at least once a day to discuss everything. And they do all of the physical and neurological exams. They go over past medical history, as well as all the eligibility for the trial, and monitor safety the whole time as well. I work with physical therapists who come in to do different outcomes, especially when it comes to eligibility outcomes. They'll do the breathing test to make sure that everything's done correctly. They'll also check in clinically just to make sure, that people are doing okay and they have all the resources that they need as well. And so it does take the whole team to kind of do this. And the coordinator is the one that will be like, all right, it's time for the nurse to come in, or the neurologist needs to sign off on drugs. So we really are just kind of like, running around, making sure everyone does what they need to do.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that research coordinators are really the backbone of the trials, and we really depend on them for coordinating everything, as you said. And I was wondering, from the point of view of somebody who's interested in participating in the trial, or even current participants, what's the best way to interact with clinical research coordinators? And again, some sites use phone, other sites use email. There's different ways of communicating, but I guess any tips for people who want to connect with sites? Who should they contact initially, to make the initial contact, or who's their point of reference kind of at the site?
Yeah, and so on the HEALEY website, there are contact information for all the different coordinators for all the different sites. I would say the best form of contact initially is probably by email, just because we might be in a study visit all day that takes 6 to 7 hours, so we're not at our desk at our phone all day long like maybe some other people might be. So we're kind of running around, and I think email is probably the best way to go about it, because we always respond to emails. We try to say 24 to 48 hours. Depending on what's going on in the day, but we always, can get back via email. And then, I think following up with a phone call is also great, because sometimes you can't always say everything you want in email, or if you have questions, it's kind of easier to have that conversation over phone. But initially, I think email is probably the best way to go about it.
Great, thank you. So if you have any questions for Danny, please send them via the Q&A box. And while you send your questions, I'll provide some updates about the trial. And I see, Catherine, thank you so much for sending the link to the website where you can find the information for the lead coordinator at every site. So that will be your primary point of contact at that particular center. If you can go to the next slide. As Danny mentioned, we started with a few regimens, and then we continue to add. And at this time, we are enrolling for the last regimen, the most recent regimen, regimen E, the one labeled in pink, that's testing trialols. And we'll talk more about that in a second. Next slide. And so as of right now, we have 68 individuals that have signed informed consent, and 44 who have been randomized within regimen E. And I see a question in the chat about the enrollment rates. I know that for those of you who have been following us from the beginning, at the very beginning of the trial, the enrollment rates were really incredibly high. And we were enrolling in 3 or 4 different regimens with dozens of, tons of participants being added every week. And so right now with regimen E, we're a little bit slower for a number of reasons, but actually we are on target in terms of our own projections. And 2022 is a little bit of a special year for ALS, lots of things happening, drug approvals, possible drug approvals, etc. And this is the first IV regimen, meaning that it's the first regimen where the drug is given intravenously via an infusion. And so we had to make sure that all our processes for both infusions in the hospital and infusions at home were working well. And I'm happy to report that infusions at home have been going really well. And actually, Danny, later I'll ask you some comments about that, because I know you have a lot of experience with participants in regimen E. And so I would say again, now that we made sure that everything is working well, I do expect the enrollment rates to increase. But again, it's a little bit of a special time in ALS in 2022. That said, again, we are aligned with our projections, and we are working to add 1 or 2 regimens by the end of the year. There was also another question about why only 1 regimen. Well, the other regimens are still very active. I just want to make sure that people understand that people like Danny are not just managing only regimen E at their site. They're actually managing new people in regimen E, as well as closing out regimens A, B, C, and D, so that we can have results over the summer. So again, the platform trial is incredibly active. So I don't want people to get the impression that it's sort of slowed down. On the other hand, we are getting ready to release the results of the first 4 drugs over the summer, early fall, while enrolling participants in these new regimens. So I hope that answers the questions that we had about sort of plans. Next slide. And so right now we have 36 sites activated for regimen E. They're listed here. Next slide. And this is the slide that I think, Catherine, you sent the link to this particular web page that we have on our website. As you can see here, we are listing the list of sites as well as their status and contact information on our website. So it's easy to get there using either the link or the QR code. So the name that's listed as contact information, in this case, Andrew and Heidi, for those 2 sites, those are basically Danny's peers. Those are the primary coordinators at that specific location in Pennsylvania, in this case on the slide, and they serve the same role as Danny does at MGH, where they are the primary contact information. And some people prefer phone, some people prefer email. Again, the contact information will sort of tell you that. And again, every site is a little bit different. And while we're all in network, we do respect the fact that the trial is actually happening in very different institutions, in very different geographic areas. And so there are local policies and local processes that we cannot override, but we have to adapt to that. At the same time, the trial is the same. So that the experience in terms of the drug, what drug you get, what protocol is followed, the procedures, they're exactly the same. But some of the nuances, such as interaction with the coordinators, for example, may be different, again, because the context may be different geographically. Next slide. As always, if you have any trouble connecting with a site or figuring out which site is closest to you, please contact Catherine and Alison. That's the contact information over here, as well as links and QR codes to sign up for this webinar series and our newsletter. We will continue to provide updates. And again, I think this will be a very interesting summer with lots of research news. So please feel free to continue to, please join us and continue to follow our newsletter. We do have some fantastic guest speakers coming up. Next week, I'm so excited to have Honore and Natalie from our Connecticut site, Hospital for Special Care. They are the research nurse and coordinator, respectively, at that site. And so they work together, just like Danny does at the MGH site. And he works with many of our fantastic research nurses. So today, Honore and Natalie will explain how they work together and what the setup is at Hospital for Special Care. Again, every site has their own flavor, which is fantastic. And so we look forward to hearing from them. They're very, high enrolling site and wonderful site to work with. The following week, I'm particularly excited to welcome another patient advisory committee member, Bruce Rosenblum. We had Nadia Sethi last week, I believe, or 2 weeks ago, and that was wonderful. Actually, Catherine, if you could post the link to the webinar we had with Nadia, I think really great to hear from her. And along the same lines, I can't wait to hear from Bruce. They are fantastic and very active patient advisors. We have a committee for the platform trial, and we have a committee for the EAP companion to the platform trial. So in particular, Bruce will talk about the EAP Patient Advisory Committee, since he's a member of that particular committee. And then we are going to continue our tour around the country later in June with our primary investigator at Santa Alfonso's Medical Center in Idaho. As you may remember from previous series, we recently expanded into Idaho, and we're so excited. Actually, a few people asked questions previously about having a site in that location, and so now we do have it. So thank you so much. We're very happy that we are present in new geographies, and so we'll hear directly from the principal investigator from that new site. Next slide, which I think is the last one. I do want to put in a plug for an upcoming webinar with Niels and the ALS Association. We're going to have a webinar specifically dedicated to Regimen E. And as you may remember, we had a previous webinar about the science of the drug while we're testing in Regimen E. And this is going to be a little bit different. This is going to be a participant's guide. And so really the clinical aspects, what does it mean to be part of Regimen E? What's the patient experience? And we will just, again, provide some tips and some suggestions. So join us for that as well. And let's see, actually, then I wanted to ask you, what's your experience with the home infusion company?
So PCM Trials has been amazing so far. We were excited to work with them, and so far so good. We have two participants doing at-home infusions, and everything seems to be going well. The nurses are wonderful. No complaints so far. So it was great to hear that everything was working out. Yeah, great. So there's a number of questions about other trials. So I'll just, briefly comment on those. Well, the topic of this webinar is the platform trial, or the EAP companion to the platform trial as well. I just wanted to mention that, somebody posted about a recent press release from Clean Nanomedicine. They are presenting additional data from one of their previous studies. And we're excited that they continue to publish on the other study. That was a smaller study that was done ex-US. And again, we're happy that they have new promising data, again, from that previous study. I would say that Regimen C in the platform trial, which is testing the drug manufactured by Clean Nanomedicine, is going to be the definitive test on that drug. So definitely happy to hear results from the previous small trial, but I think it's also good that we'll have results from a much larger trial over the summer. So that's great. Other questions. Oh, actually, I have a question for Danny. So since you're here, I do want to ask you that, to give priority to that. Can you share with us your favorite aspect of your job working as a research coordinator? And can you also share the most challenging aspect of this job? Of course. So I really think my favorite part about working at this job is the wonderful relationships that I built with my participants, sometimes over the last year and a half. And, it's so nice to build that rapport with people and be able to spend time with them and, and make it as positive as we can be while they're in this trial. And so, it is definitely one of my favorite aspects of the trial, because study visits, even if they last like 4 to 5 hours, I feel like they fly by because, we're having as much fun as we can, but also, going through everything as thoroughly as possible. And sometimes I think the hardest part is also that relationship, because you build these wonderful relationships, and then sometimes, people want to leave the study for whatever reason, and you just kind of have to keep on moving along, but you still kind of look back at that relationship and you're like, wow, that was wonderful for the time that I spent with them.
Great, thank you. So there's a specific question about the site in Florida, and I'll ask Catherine to work with our project management team to update our website. So the Holy Cross site is still listed as a platform trial site because they still are. However, Dr. Locatelli moved to a different site in a town nearby, Nova Southeastern University in Davie, Florida. So that's correct. So now we are basically operating across the two systems. And again, I think if this was not updated, I haven't checked on our website. If Catherine, you could make sure that that's updated on the website, that would be great. Again, there are changes again at the site, but we have teams both at the previous site and the new site. And I see a great comment about research coordinators rock. That's so true, and thank you so much for saying that. So there's a question about another trial again, the AbbVie Calico trial that's starting up. That's a phase 1b trial. I believe we are a site as well for that. And so I think that the science behind the drug is really fabulous. So I would just comment saying that, you know, I definitely look forward to hearing more from that trial and about that compound. Really, really great science. And I think that the last question, actually, thank you for reminding me. There is a question about starting oral Radicava while enrolled in the HEALEY platform trial. And you're absolutely right that last week I mentioned that we were discussing this internally, so I can provide some updates for full disclosure. We're still discussing it, but I can tell you that you know, we're finalizing the guidance now as we speak, but I can already kind of give you a preview that it's much better if people can make the decision on oral Radicava or Riluzole for that matter prior to starting the trial. So if people are not in the regimen E right now, they're not in the trial yet, it would be much preferable that they decide on Radicava, yes or no, either way, before they start the trial. And that's because switching or kind of starting the drug mid-trial would actually affect potentially the results. And so we're doing a little bit more work with the statisticians and the FDA. Actually, we're asking them a few questions to confirm that, you know, how to handle that scenario. So if somebody is not in the trial yet, again, it would be much better to decide on Radicava, yes or no, before somebody starts in the trial. Now, if somebody is in the trial, as I shared earlier, we have about 40 people who have already been randomized into regimen E, and I'll get to the other question, what does that mean? So we have 44 people that are already in the trial. So for those, again, if they can wait to start when they are in the open label extension, that would be great. That said, you know, please talk to your physician. You know, we completely understand that clinical practice comes first, clinical care comes first. So again, if people are willing to wait, that's great, so that the statistical results are not affected. That said, again, we won't kick people out. So please contact your physician, discuss it with them, and we can try to find out, depending on your specific situation, etc., how to best accommodate your needs at this time, since you are already in the trial. So again, more to come on this. We will finalize official guidance. Again, we're talking, you know, with statisticians, the FDA, and but I can already tell you again, if you're not in the trial yet, it would be great if you want to start Radicava to start it before you join the trial. And in terms of the other question, what does it mean to be randomized within regimen E? So I just wanted, you know, to mention, I went rather quickly because on that I didn't really explain the design of the trial. Perhaps next week we could reinsert one of the previous slides to kind of walk the audience through the design, because I think we explained that in previous webinars, but we always have new people join. So apologies if I didn't explain that this time. So when people join the trial, and they are assigned to a regimen, so for example, regimen E in this particular case, they are assigned in a random way to either active drug or placebo, which is basically a kind of a saline solution in this case. You know, the active drug is an infusion, and the placebo is basically an infusion that we know doesn't work, doesn't have the active component. So they're randomized to either active or placebo in a 3-to-1 ratio in favor of active. So what that means is that for every 4 people that enter regimen E, those 4 people will be randomly assigned to active or placebo. 3 of them will be on active and only 1 will be on placebo, which is a much more favorable ratio compared to traditional trials where it's actually 1-to-1. So for every 2 people, 1 will go on active and 1 will go on placebo. So that's what the randomization is. I do want to mention that for this particular trial, which is again another favorable feature of the trial, people are randomized to active or placebo only for 6 months. And then if they complete those 6 months, they're given the opportunity to take the active drug for sure in the open label extension, which is long-term. So the placebo-controlled part of the randomization, I guess, part only lasts for 6 months, which statistically is the shortest possible to be able to tell if a drug works or not. If we went shorter than that, then we wouldn't be able to tell if the drug works or not. So I just wanted to clarify that. But we are working with our statistician on hopefully having her back to explain some of these statistical concepts. Great. Any final words from you, Danny?
Just thank you to everyone who, it helps out with everything in the research, and all my participants that I've worked with. It's been a truly lovely experience. Thank
you. And I do want to acknowledge the entire team at the MGH site. So really, Daniel is fantastic here great to be here with you today, and you are representing a great team, and we all work together. And so we are here for the participants. So don't hesitate to contact us. And again, Danny is your primary point of contact, and he has wonderful colleagues, especially when he leaves. I know we have already new people who will continue the good work. So thank you so much. And we'll see you next week. Thank you. Bye-bye.